You're listening to The Moose and the Loose, your 10 minutes action-packed financial podcast with your host, Mike Yahoo. Hey, what's up, Market Moose? Mike from The Moose on the Loose. I hope you're doing well on this Tuesday. Today, I want to come back on a question I received from one of my DSR members during the last private webinar that I held. So I do like 10 private webinars per year, so once a month besides summer times for my members, where they can ask me literally anything. And the last one happened a couple of weeks ago. I answered like 92 questions. The webinar was like 2 hours and a half. And that's great because for those members, I send them the timetable, so they know exactly when the question was asked and when I answered it, so they can skip to the question they really want to know the answer. Because of course, across 92 questions, that's definitely a lot of thinking and a lot of answers for maybe something that is not related to you, right? So one question I thought was really interesting was a member that recently retired. And he said, well, the dividend income is not enough for me to just retire on those dividend payments. So I need to sell some shares, and I don't know what would be the order. I don't know like how to process, what would be like an easy step-by-step process to start selling. So first, what I want to say is it's a good thing that your dividends aren't enough to cover your lifestyle, because it's probably a good indicator that your portfolio is very healthy. Unless if you have like several millions, maybe it's going to be like you'll be able to cover your expenses with a lower yield. But the point is, if you need 5, 6, 7, 10% yield to retire, your portfolio is not in good health, and it's going to come with valuation drops and likely dividend cuts. So that 10% will not be 10% for a long time. In 3 years from now, it may become down to 5% because it was slashed by 50, like by half. So you don't necessarily want to see that. But that's just like a general comment. It's just like raising red flags. Some people do it and it's worked for them, so good for you. But I still prefer to have a little bit lower yield, but having companies that are able to increase their dividend and B, show a strong dividend triangle, so revenue growth and earnings growth on top of the dividend increases, just to make sure that I'm investing in thriving companies that will be able to weather any kind of storms. So now back to that young retiree question. How do you go about selling shares? So first, I already discussed that on the podcast. You should have a cash reserve. The cash reserve or cash wedge should be used whenever you must sell shares, but the market is not cooperating and it's a down market. So what we had in 22, for example, if your stocks are down 10, 15, 20%, it's probably not the best time to start selling those. So you want to have a cash reserve to cover for those years. But then imagine that it's all good and we are in a year like this year in 24 where the market is up, so your portfolio is in positive, and then you're looking at your portfolio and you're like, all right, so now I need to sell shares. So what I suggest is, and again, not financial advice, is just like what I would do personally. So you do you, I do me, and if this strategy is not for you, that's great. I just want to give an example of how I will approach things once I will retire and need to sell shares to actually, I'm doing this methodology for my RESP right now for my children whenever I need money to help them in their at school and pay for the tuitions and stuff. I do that methodology, and I will use it once I retire as well. It works very well because it's very easy. So I approach that with a portfolio management strategy in mind. So the first thing that I would do is I would look at my sector exposure. So if I need to trim somewhere, I will start by looking at my portfolio and making sure I'm not overweight in a specific sector, because then it could be a pretty good start to a pretty good place to start, right? So look at all my sectors. Ideally, I don't want to be over 20%. Again, that's a personal choice, but I'm just figuring out if I have 30, 40% in one sector, if there's a crisis that is specific to this sector, I'm going to take a big hit in my portfolio. So I might as well select like great companies across many sectors to be a little bit more well diversified. So if there's a crisis in the financial sector, not all my money will be hit. Like right now, you can see that it's a pretty rough time for utilities, a pretty rough time for REITs, not so great time for Canadian banks either. So if you're heavily focused on those, and telcos, for example, same thing. If you're heavily focused on those sectors, you did not have a great year last year. This year is pretty much like not that good as well. But if you're well diversified, you are in positive territory. So the first thing, look at my sector exposure. And if I'm overweight, then I'm going to start looking at those stocks to see which one I can trim or get rid of. So the second step is to look at my stock exposure. Similar to the sector exposure thinking, I don't want to be overexposed to a single stock. So if, for example, I'm overweight in industrials, and then on top of that, I look at my individual stocks and I have a big investment in TFI International or Canadian National Railways, which are in the industrial sector. Well, then I already know that by trimming those two positions, I will lower my risk to a stock exposure perspective and also rebalance my portfolio from a sector exposure perspective. So this is the point of I first identifying like big view. Oh, I have overweight in this and that sector. And then when you look at the stock exposure, I'm like, oh, it's the right time to trim some of them. Most of the time, it's going to be like your biggest winners. But at one point, you want to let your winners run, but you do not want to derail your portfolio either. See what I did there? Like CNR derailed your portfolio? All right. Maybe I'm just in my mind, but anyways, I find myself funny. That's the important part, right? So sector exposure, stock exposure, and then I will go through all my stock and do a stock review. So the stock review is really to look at each company, verify my investment thesis. So making sure that I still remember all the reasons why I have this stock in my portfolio, and they better be good. Like not just, oh, I like this stock, this company has been around for a while, or it's paying a nice dividend. This is not an investment thesis. I'm really talking about, oh, this business is thriving because A, B, and C, they show organic growth because they do D and E and F and so on. So that is your investment thesis. And then I look at the metrics to make sure that the story I made up in my mind is actually aligned with financial metrics. So on one side, you have the story, which is the qualitative analysis, and then you have the metrics that will back up your story, the facts that will be the quantitative analysis. So you know me, I already prefer to look at the dividend triangle first. So revenue, earnings, and dividend. So if my investment thesis is this company is growing both organically and by growth by acquisition, and I look at the revenue and I see a revenue growth of like 2% per year over the past 3-4 years, well, my investment thesis is not right. They are not doing what I expected them to do. So maybe at this point, it's time to let it go. You probably noticed that I didn't talk about stock returns. I didn't talk about stock performance. The point here, again, is making sure that I believe in that business and the numbers are backing my beliefs. So it's nothing about, oh, it's a bad timing for REITs. I'm going to sell all of them because they're losers in my portfolio. It's all about, is it still making sense to have those companies in my portfolio because they show metrics that are aligned with what I think the company will do. So sector exposure, stock exposure, stock review, and then you can do some tax optimization as well. So you can look at some of your losers, some of your winners, you trim a little bit of both, and then when you sell, you don't have to pay taxes. That is also a great way to do it. So start with the portfolio management view. So sector, stock exposure, making sure that your portfolio is well diversified and well balanced. And then you make sure that all the companies in your portfolio has their role and they're actually playing their role. I mean, it's like a hockey team, right? You don't want to pay a guy $8 million a year for 15 goals, right? It doesn't make any sense. If he's paid $8 million a year, you need him to actually rack up at least 30 goals or getting like 55, 60, 70 points. If not, you're not getting a good deal. And that's pretty much the idea here. You want to make sure that the facts are backing the thesis, and then you do some tax optimization, you wrap it up, and then boom, you have enough to sell shares and generate the income you need to retire on that year. So, all right, Moose, that's enough for today. I hope that this little trick has helped you out. Let me know. I know that I'm on my YouTube channel now, so all the episodes are on the YouTube, so you can comment on those, which is kind of great. I'm getting feedback on that, so I really love that. So up on YouTube, look at the Dividend guy, and then you'll find Moose on the Loose over there. And yeah, so give me some comments. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you want me to talk about. And we'll see you tomorrow. So, all right, tomorrow, big day. Alimentation Couche-Tard earnings review. I'm super excited. They're reporting tonight. So actually, this is what I'm thinking. Anyway, I have to verify that. So chances are tomorrow morning, this is what we're going to be talking. Until then, don't forget to stay invested.
Hey, welcome to the disclaimer. If you're listening to the Moose and the Loose, you cannot really expect me to give you buy or sell recommendation or financial advice, right? You're here for fun, you're here for information and some entertainment. But I am not your financial advisor, I am not your broker, so therefore I'm not liable if you're losing money after listening to the podcast. If you're looking for some advice, go see a professional. If not, you can enjoy the show and do your due diligence after it.